All right. Hello, everyone. Hey, Dr. Pierre here, your favorite board certified internist, founder of drpierre.com. And I wanted to, Dr. Pierre, forgot we upgraded that. So this is going to be our first time doing YouTube Live. So we're going to be doing a lot of housekeeping things just to make sure that it is running correctly. We'll also be posting directly on Facebook Live as well. So we're going to get the best of both worlds on that front. Give me a second. Just want to make sure we're doing. I want to see if I'm able to see my my video on YouTube. Make sure we can get started there. This thing I can't really tell where would my live video be. So give me a quick second. Okay, so let me say, hoping that webinar JAMA has got us on YouTube. Okay, so we're gonna start the Facebook as well too, just to give our Facebook crowd a quick look too. All right, hey Facebook crowd. So again, I am hopefully I'm Dr. Pierre, your favorite board certified internist. So I'm hoping to be broadcasting live on both Facebook page as well as my YouTube page. Well, like I said, after this go around, we will kind of see how this goes. But I wanted to do our first, we haven't done one of these in a while, Empower Yourself for Better Health, episode 64, where we're going to be talking about a topic and a question that actually came up because of this recent article I read. And the question kind of formulated said, like, do we live longer? Do we get better health outcomes if we have early morning appointments, right? So this was actually an article that was done in the, let me give you, Journal of American Medical Association, right? So JAMA, which is a very pretty significant article. And it looked at two different tests, right? So it looked at one, our breast cancer screening, and two, our colon cancer screening, right? Because we know colon cancer in general, number one killer in the world, right? Just from a totality standpoint, cancer in general is the number one killer in the world. And it looked to see like, hey, whether this, and I will talk about some of the numbers of this study. It looked at it and say, hey, like if you schedule your appointments 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, right? Do you get better outcomes in the long run, right? So this actually study was done at the University of Pennsylvania. Let me just kind of give you some of the numbers. Looked at, again, almost 19,000 patients in the breast cancer population, almost 33,000 patients in the colon cancer population, right? So colon cancer, breast cancer, two of the more deadlier cancers here in the United States, here in the world really, but definitely here in the United States. And they wanted to look at like, well, if I get this early morning appointment, right, like how do I fare better, right? So it actually looked at two different parts that I was actually very interested in. It looked at to say like not only does your physician, right, because of course, when it comes to healthcare, right, and I talk about this all the time, right, it is it's a two-person game, right? It's the physician and it's you, right? So it looked at one, like, does your physician, right, prescribe the correct medication, right? And now this time it wasn't even medication, right? Does your physician like order the right test when they're supposed to order it? And the second one was, okay, what's the likelihood that you'll actually complete the test that your physician ordered within 1 year, right? So they gave you, which is a long time when you think about it, right? So they gave you a full year to be able to say like, okay, like I'm actually doing what I need to do as far as the treatment course. So I just want to kind of give you some numbers, right? So again, we had in the first population, again, this was like a 2-year study. It looked at over, again, 19 to 32,000 patients total. It said how many of these patients are getting the test that they need, right? So when we focus on the breast cancer, Of course, this was 100% female was the population, right? Which again, not to say that males don't get breast cancer. Especially if you listen to my podcast episode, that male can get breast cancer. But this one looked at all just females, right? It looked at 19,000 females. 60% were white, 30% were black, and it looked at the screening test order, right? So this essentially says, like, if you are qualified to get for me to order the mammogram, right, which is usually the screening test of choice, like, how often did we do it, right? So first and foremost, right, the highest rates, right, in our 8 o'clock block, again, the first morning test was about 64%, which in and of itself is actually a problem, right? So I want us to stop right there. So 64% of the time when I had a patient who should have gotten a mammogram at least ordered, right, I was correct 64% of the time, or I actually did my job 64% of the time, right? Now, again, it didn't go into detail why, it was such because that's really not a good rate. Honestly, I'll just be honest with you, especially me being the public health person myself. That's not a good rate, right? But again, it's the high. It was unfortunately the highest, right? So if you had an 8 o'clock block, right? So if your appointment was 8:15, 8:30, 8:45, they said you were at 8 o'clock block, right? So 64% of patients who had that early morning appointment got the test ordered for them. Now, as the day went on, right? So this is by day, right? By the time you got 11 o'clock in the morning, by the time it was 11 o'clock in the morning, that number dropped to less than 50%, right? So about 48% of the time was your physician actually ordering the test for the mammogram, right? So again, we're just focusing on just our mammogram population here, right? Now, after lunch, right? Because it even talked about it, like after 12 o'clock. After 12 o'clock, the number jumped up to about 57%. Again, still not good, but definitely much better than you were doing at the end of the morning. But then by the time it was closing time, it dropped down below 50% again to about 47.5%, right? So again, what do we get from those numbers here, right? So we know that if you are at risk for breast cancer, again, this is just the study, University of Pennsylvania, 2-year deal, right? And I should be ordering a mammogram. The highest I could do it for, right, was 64% of the time, right? So 64% of the time, the physician was actually ordering the test appropriately, which again is a problem. But we know by the time, and this is an 8 o'clock morning test, right? But by the time you hit 11 o'clock, that number is already dropping below 50% of the time. So less than half of the time I should be ordering the test, I'm not ordering the test. And then when I start back my day up after lunch, right, that number gets up to about 57%, but then goes right down below 50% again by the time it's ready to get out of here, right? So let's kind of focus there, right? So now we have a situation where as a physician, right, as a primary care physician, right, even though I hate that word, right, general practitioner, right, as your physician, right, your captain of your ship, right, I'm dropping the ball almost 30 to 50% of the time, right? Almost 30 to 50% of the time, I am dropping the ball when it comes to ordering just the mammogram for you. Not very ideal in that regards, and it gets worse as the day progresses. So we get on the physicians, right? We know that's not good, right? We know we need to work on that. Now let's talk about the flip side, right? So let's say, right, I am a part of that 60% of the time where I actually order the test, right? Like, what is the percentage that you'll actually do the test, right, within 1 year? Again, this is really not good. The rates, again, we're just talking about breast cancer screening, right? So for those early morning appointments, the numbers are about a third, right? So a third of the patients, right, would actually go and get the test done that your doctor ordered, right? Especially if their appointment was at 8 o'clock in the morning. But that number drops to about 20%, less than 20% by the time it hits 5 p.m., right? Which is definitely not ideal. Definitely not something we're, a champion of, right? So it's this two-way street where as a physician, we're dropping the ball, right? Almost 50% of the time we almost drop the ball and say, hey Maria. So 50% of the time we're dropping the ball and saying like, hey, we're not getting the test we need to order. And then on the flip side, right, as a patient, right, 30% of the time, a third of the time, you're actually going to get that mammogram done, right? So that's so when we talk about these death rates, right, breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, lung cancer, all these things here, you see that both parties are really not helping each other out, right? But if you had to choose, right, again, just on the breast cancer, right, if you had to choose getting that early morning appointment makes you more likely, right, to follow through, right? We're not sure why. Again, some of the hypothesis that they talked about was fatigue, right? And fatigue is a big thing. Of course, you turn on TV these days, you know how much fatigue has been, such a huge factor here in the treatment course of the physician, right? Like everyone's tired, the mental breakdown, burnout, that's very real. So they're saying that, like, you know what, when the doctor first walks into their office, right, they're fresh, they're ready to go. But as the day goes on, builds, and someone misses an appointment or someone comes in late, that pushes everyone, appointment back, right? They start forgetting stuff, right? When they start having to do stuff a lot quicker, right? Because again, if you're at 8 o'clock an appointment, right, there's usually no one in front of you, so your doctor's ready, right? But if you're at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock appointment, your doctor knows that, hey, I got to get you out the room, right? Because I got to get, someone in your seat, right? So that's that issue there. But again, what do we say about the patients, right? What the patients, again, always have to take that onus, right? They have to say, like, as a patient, why am I not getting the test that my doctor ordered? Right? Again, the early morning folks, right, we're about 33%, just 33%. But the people who were at like that 5 p.m. dropped to 20%, right? Not good, not ideal whatsoever. So I wanted to let's go to our next subject, right? So now that was breast cancer, right? Now colon cancer, right? So now colon cancer, this screening rate was about 33,000 people, right? So they looked at 33,000 patients over that same 2-year marker and said, like, hey, you should be screened for colon of almost 56% were female, almost 67% were white, 22% were black, right? Just in general, just so you can kind of get an idea. And trust me, I will have a link to these to this article that I'm kind of going after if you want to read that. And so I will have that link there. So screening tests for colon cancer at 8 o'clock in the morning was only 37%. Now, if you remember just a few minutes ago, I said that at the lowest, right? And the screening is like, how often is the physician recommending it, right? At the lowest, for breast cancer, right, I'm recommending it about 47, 48% of the time. But for colon cancer, the best I can do is 37%. That, my friends, is a problem, right? And it's one of the reasons why colon cancer is so difficult, right, to treat, right? Because we're not screening the people who should be appropriately treated, right? So that's a problem. And that number drops to about 31% by the time it hits 11 o'clock. It has a slight bump after lunch to about 34%, and it goes down to 23%, right? So the worst case scenario for a person, and when we're talking about cancer screening, right, is if you schedule a 5 o'clock appointment, right, and you need to be screened for colon cancer. That's what the test is essentially saying. That if you need to be screened for colon, you need to get this colon cancer screening test done. I'm going to order this test for you, right? So that's the issue there. And then the trends for who completes it range from 28% at best in the morning to about 20%, about 17% at best at 5 p.m., right? So again, if we start low, we're going to end lower, right? So again, I just want to kind of quickly recap, the crux of today's show, right? So today's episode focused on, whether a person, that has a better outlook on life, right? Especially when it comes to cancer screening, if they schedule an appointment at 8 o'clock in the morning, not just in the morning. And we look at two populations. This was a 19,000 and 33,000 patients, right? So there's a lot of patients, right? This looked at breast cancer and colon cancer. And it's looked at, say, hey, if you are a breast cancer, you should definitely go in the morning, right? Because at best, right, your doctor was asking you or ordering the test about 64% of the time. At worst, it was about 47% of the time, right? So you go from 64% to 47%. And this is supposed to be out of 100, right? So we're not doing a good job from the physician standpoint. From the patient aspect, not even better, right? 33% of the patients who I order that mammogram, only about 20%, less than 20% are actually doing it within a year, right? So it ranges from about 32% to less than 20%, right, who actually do the test. So again, we have a lot of work to do on breast cancer. Going to colon cancer, those numbers are even more abysmal. Less than 40% at best of people who need to get screened for colon cancer are actually being told, hey, you need to get screened for colon cancer, right? Not good whatsoever, right? And at worst, it was less than, let me see, 23%, right? So it ranged from about 37% to about 23%, right? Depending on what time you schedule your appointment. And, and I got to look at the patients again, patient wise, 28% to 20%, right? So even the people who are appropriately being screened and having this just order for them, it is not very ideal that you'll actually likely do the test. And then again, we talk about this test being done within the year, right? So points I want to be able to kind of bring and hit home for you guys, right, from the physician standpoint. Because again, when we do these Empower Yourself for Better Health videos, right, it's always about what can the physician do better, what can the patient do better. As from a physician standpoint, we have to educate our patients, but we have to educate ourselves first, right? We have to educate ourselves in understanding who's at risk for these cancers, right? Colon cancer, breast cancer, prostate, all these cancers, right? Who's at risk for these cancers, and who should I be ordering this test on, right? So we have to educate ourselves for that. We have to be able to try to mitigate what's natural, right? Which is being tired, being fatigued, right? We have to probably likely set up processes in the way so that we understand that as a physician, right, like we shouldn't be dealing with these problems, right? So as a physician, we should know like who needs this and who needs that. So who needs this? Like, yes, I got this patient. I know they're coming at 4:30 in the afternoon, but I have to remember I got to ask about their mammogram. I have to ask about their colonoscopy, right? Like that's as a physician. Flip it on to the patients, right? Again, we're all everyone's a patient, right? I'm a patient, right? I'm a patient. I'm a physician and patient. As a patient, right, I have to understand the importance of it, right? Like, again, I'm taking care of patients right now who are gonna have major surgeries, right, from colon cancer, and we know colon cancer is one of the slowest growing cancers out there, right? But they're gonna have major surgery. They're gonna have their colon taken out, probably their liver taken out. Why? Because they never got the colonoscopy done, right? They never followed up. And they were of age too, right? So they're definitely, it's not like they're 80 and they kind of forgot about it. No, they're like in their 50s and they just never got the colonoscopy done for whatever reason, right? And now I got to tell them, instead of, hey, you need a colonoscopy, hey, you have colon cancer, right? Like that's the conversation I have to have with them, right? And hey, you have breast cancer, right? Those are conversations we have to have because patients aren't being screened in adequate and appropriate time. So again, Lunch Learning Community, I want to thank you for all your support. Like I said, I'm going to make sure we bring consistent education to you guys. Again, this is episode 64. Again, if you have not caught the other 63 episodes, check out my YouTube page, drpierre.com/YouTube, or drpierre.com/Facebook, and all of my videos are there. But it's actually a little bit better organized on my actual website because the Facebook page isn't as organized as I like. So if you want to see all of your Empower Yourself for Better Health series, they're all in the playlist. You can just play them one by one. Go to drpierre.com/YouTube, and it's right there. You'll see the playlist for the podcast, but you also see the playlist for these videos. And you guys have a great day. Like I said, sorry I ran a little bit late, but when you work in a hospital, patients come when patients come, right? So you guys have a great blessed day. I'm see you next week.